could fail a lot. So
I have a lot of potential for tech mess ups. I was very excited. Sarah, 3 hours.
Oh no, you're so good. And Sarah's on the phone too, Sarah Gentry. So we're saved if it.
We are
yay. All right.
Back up. All good things.
Elizabeth, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
You had a rough year, and we're happy that you're here and smiling.
Thank you. It was a rough year, and things are going better.
Good.
And it's just so hot. It's unseasonably hot, and there are fires all over the place very early on. It's kind of scary.
Are you near any of those fires, Elizabeth?
I mean, there's little ones that, you know, I guess it's not 1,000 acres that's burning, but there's small ones that have potential to be bigger ones. So I haven't looked today, but we had all this lightning, this weird thunderstorm, you know, like east northeast East Coast weather.
Did you have the tornado fire or the fire tornado or whatever it was called?
I don't think so. They said we had dry lightning, whatever that is, as opposed to wet lightning. I don't know.
I don't lightning is dry.
I like my lightning dry. Hi, Rosie.
Hello.
You ain't right.
Bright lightning's bad. It starts fires. So you don't have
that's what we're
I have to
gathering.
look up how lightning works because I'm like, they're like, it comes from the ground. I'm like, oh, so if you get hit by lightning, it just comes up and hits you in the face. Now, how do people? And they're like, no, the eons. And so, Kenny, that's a discussion for another day. You can come explain that to me.
I've actually time-lapsed lightning and gotten it in slow motion to see how it all forms.
Wow.
Well, I would love to see that because I don't understand.
Now I don't know if it was dry lightning or wet lightning.
Well, you need to find out that before we speak because
Wet lightning. Somebody look up wet lightning.
Actually, I'm going to let Kenny take the webinar because I want to see that.
Metal band from the 80s. Wet lightning.
wet lightning. Na, 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 na.
Totally. And their secret track hit you in the face.
Well, this is great. So we're up to 13 and we have a couple more people trickling in, which is wonderful. Hi, Doreen, Chicago. How are you?
I like Elizabeth's cat picture.
I know. I'm glad all the Elizabeths are putting their last name because we have 3 Elizabeths tonight.
Hey, Rosie, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for making it. There's Terrence. Good, good, good. Hey, Sarah, thanks so much for taking the time. I know you've been swamped. Oh, you know what? My phone just thought I said, hey, Siri.
We'll ask Siri about wet lightning.
Right.
It's like, hey, Siri. I said, hey, Sarah. And it's like, what can I help you with? I'm like, shh.
So my son says wet lightning's a lot like grease lightning, but different.
We're not any closer to an answer, people.
And not to be confused with white lightning.
Oh, dear.
That stuff will kill you quick.
Is that a beverage?
Yes.
I'm sorry?
Is that a beverage?
If that's what you want to call it. It's one of those beverages where you hang your liver out in the closet before you go forth.
Like Fireball or Goldschlager?
Yeah.
That's
essentially
like
garbage.
what I got right here.
Well, that explains a few things.
Elizabeth Ouellette, Dr. Vera Fredman. Have you met Vera?
Oh, yeah, I know her Vera very well.
She's coming on. She
is
the Center of Excellence clinical director in Denver is joining us tonight, which is wonderful.
That's good, good, good.
Yes, yes. Amazing neurologist with
she is in Colorado.
So true story right quick before we get officially started.
Mm-hmm.
My son's school district is starting online only this year at the end of the month. And today was a parental information live stream with school board leadership. And they literally said, when school starts, we do not want the kids in pajamas or sitting on their bed, etc.
Good.
And my thought is, what are they going to do about it? Going to send them home?
You're going to do it.
Think about it. Yeah, we don't want your kids in pajamas, man. You're
Yeah.
going to send them home?
Mine roll right out of bed and into front of their laptops.
I mean,
Yeah.
like most
Oh, no,
people,
no.
aren't most people wearing pajama bottoms right now?
We
I'm
got
actually,
dressed-
normally I
got
would be,
dressed
but
every day.
I got done making my messes today just in time to get on here. So I haven't even had a shower yet to be in my pajamas.
Hi, Dr. Friedman. How are you?
Sarah, how are you?
Nice
Good. How's
to
everyone doing?
I haven't seen you in a long, long time. How's Colorado?
It's great. Well, it was great.
What do you mean? You're not there anymore?
No, I am. I mean, like, you know, we're not doing anything anymore because.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it is. It's good.
Good. Yeah, I was wondering, so your center is not seeing patients?
No, we are. I go into work. Yeah. No, we don't do anything like recreationally exciting. But
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I see. I see.
the hospital is running very smoothly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
Good. Well, it's 8:04. We have 17
Let's start.
people. So if you want to take over, Elizabeth Ouellette, and I'm going to just ask everyone to mute whilst they're joining and saying hello, and you guys can get started.
Sarah Kesty, she's one of my favorite people. She wrote, one of the first things how I met her was I was at a conference and she was telling me about her book. Do you have a copy of your book, Sarah, anywhere close?
Yeah, but then you'll see that I'm wearing my work mullet where it's a nice shirt on top and then, exercise shorts.
Okay.
I know. Let me
So everyone has
find it
something?
while you do my embarrassing intro.
We didn't see anything.
No, we can't.
No? Well, then here.
Everybody.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
that's
No, that's not so
horrible.
bad. If I looked like that, I'd be standing up the whole
Me
webinar.
too.
There it is.
There it is.
Everyone has something.
Everyone can. Yes. Together we can. Together we can. And
Together we
I've given
can.
the book out to a couple of people who are educators and teachers, and she even has an x-ray of her CMT feet in there.
I
Which is
do, and I have my CMTA plug in the back.
There you go. There you go. The CMTA plug, which is
And
great.
then my x-ray before I broke my titanium screws.
Ooh.
She's had a
This is
lot
like
of foot problems.
2 or 3 iterations of my foot ago, but yeah,
So,
it's my baby.
Sarah helps people navigate the school system with their kids that have special needs, and you've taught from kindergarten all the way to high school, which I didn't realize. I thought you were more of a lower education teacher, I mean, lower grade teacher, but everything from, like, I don't know how you do that, because after 4th grade math, I started crying and I couldn't help my son anymore. So anyway, I'm just like, no way. But she's a wonderful speaker. She does a podcast. Now, do you do that weekly or monthly?
Weekly.
A weekly podcast. She's going back to school online. And last night, and she's part of our advisory board, and she is always willing to speak, always willing to give information. She's done a lot for us on the CMT website and writing and IEP and schools and accommodations. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the school system. And it's not just like your normal talk, because this year is not a normal year. It's a different year. And so first, before we so thank you, Sarah. I'd like to say thank you so much for coming on tonight and talking about this very important and it's a hot topic right now about going back to school. So I wanted to know how many of you have kids that are actually having to go back into the classroom physically? Missy. Is your name Portia? Yeah. Who else? Okay, so that's interesting. That's really interesting. So Sarah, we have a couple of people whose children either are going full-time. Are you also Marlene, your child? Okay.
Yeah, looks like Marlene too.
So yeah, so I mean, that's kind of, like.
Elizabeth, I have a grandchild who's a
That's
senior
right.
education major.
Okay, so all right, so they're going back into the classroom, which is really scary. Now, Sarah, are you going back into the classroom or are you online?
We started 2 weeks ago and we are only online, partially because of our proximity to Mexico. We haven't gotten a good grasp on it. So we're in one of the top 6 zip codes for the county in terms of infection rate. So we just called it and said, you know, everybody start online, and that's what we've been doing. So we're in our 3rd week.
And so do you think the state of California is all online, or most counties?
There are, it was really left to a lot of the local government. So there are some schools that are within counties that seemed reasonable to try to open. I know most of the area down here is not, though. So.
Okay. All right. So we do have some parents and grandparents who have kids that are going to school in class. So it kind of puts another dimension into this whole talk. So, you know, how do you feel about that? Like, what is the difference? But first of all, you have to think people homeschool. There are some people who homeschool. There are some people who have to do distance learning, which is a whole new thing for us. And then there are kids that are going back into the classroom. So in those 3 categories, maybe you can discuss the difference between homeschooling and distance learning, but then how do you think people should go back into the classroom, these kids? So I would like to talk about both sides of the coin tonight.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I think, you know, initially when, of course, like the memes follow the social actions. So right after we all go into remote teaching, we end up with all these memes about it, and people were just calling it homeschool, and that really angered some groups of teachers and angered some groups of parents, because there is a difference. There's homeschool where the teacher is also the parent, and then there's school from home where the teachers are still the primary instructors. We're the ones giving the work. We're the ones who should be the first round of support. And then the parents are sort of just in that managerial helicopter role. And I know that you have to kick in a lot more to manage some of the time management or the organization and things like that. So it's not, I'm not trying to like take away from the, I don't want to say burden, but the workload that entails doing school from home. But it's not the same as homeschool. You're not having to find curriculum. You're not having to instruct, and probably thank goodness, because you're also trying to hold it together during a pandemic. So those are the primary differences. So this is school from home. I know the East Coast sometimes calls it remote learning. We on this West Coast call it distance learning. Same idea.
So how about if you have a child? So first of all, there's so many questions. So let's talk about those parents who have kids going to school and they have CMT and they have special needs, and how is that changing their lives? And first of all, I don't know how parents, if I had young children today or children going to school, I'd be totally stressed out, whatever age they are. But how are people dealing with the special needs and just going to school, first of all, and then the special needs category? And how do you get resources, and how are we doing this year?
Right. The primary thing, the message I want to clarify straight out is that special ed is not canceled. It has changed just like everything else, and we've had to pivot, and we've hit some bumps in the road. I'm not going to lie. Like there were probably some services like speech and OT and things like that that maybe weren't so hot at the beginning because we were all sort of scrambling to figure it out. I think on the opening of this school year, though, we've had some time to reflect on how we failed in March through May, and now we can kind of bump it up. So you can still expect services to be happening. It just may be through teletherapy, which could end up great and could end up not so great, depending on how much hands-on your child's requiring.
So teletherapy, that means like there's it's a virtual, or not virtual, but you're remotely speaking with the teacher. Now those are one-on-one or two-on-one, or?
It really depends on the model that's described in the IEP or the 504 plan. I've seen it one-on-one if it's like articulation, like making the sounds for speech. If it's more of a social support, then it makes sense to have a small group because you can kind of model peer interactions and make sure that you're supporting real life application of skills instead of just theoretical. Because you can practice with an adult how to improve your social skills. Easy sneezy, I know how to react to you, but you need real life kids to practice with.
So if you're doing speech in school, how does that work with a mask on? And I'm just thinking of all these obstacles now, you know?
Sure. Are you talking, I'm talking speech therapy, not speech class, just to clarify.
Right, speech therapy, that's right.
So your therapist can make private Google Meets or Microsoft Teams or Zoom meetings and use this facilitation the same way we are and help work with you on a schedule. The parent component would come in to make sure that your kid has some sort of prompting to get to the screen so that they're showing up for their appointment. And you can even use that type of language to kind of give it a boost in seriousness, like you have an appointment to show up for rather than just, oh, go talk to your speech teacher. I think it's really, it helps when we frame it in a way that kind of implies trust in our kids, that we're going to trust that they're going to be independent and then see how they do. And then if they can't, then we back up and say, okay, where can I support you? Kind of like putting scaffolding on a building.
Interesting. Now, how about in person? How do they do like those type of things? What's happening to PE and speech and all this when you have to go to school and get those special accommodations?
I know for the services that are small group or one-on-one, they will continue. A lot of people are trying to stay outdoors.
Okay.
And a lot of people are still doing the social distancing and masks, but it's very, very area dependent.
Right. Right. So what are parents supposed to do when their kids are at home and they have to work? So you have to get someone into, I mean, if they're small kids, and you just have to kind of implicitly trust your high school student. It's a whole new world out there.
It sure is. I think I have a podcast episode about if you have some time now before your school year starts. It's in the high 20s, like 27, 28, something like that, of the podcast episodes. But it's about training your kids for busy and not busy routines so that they can know when it's okay to interrupt you, like maybe a green zone, when it's, it really has to be important, it's a yellow zone, or red zone, absolutely not, find another way unless you are bleeding or lost an appendage. And the point of, well.
Yeah, and then you can show it, like, my arm's gone, you know?
Yeah, I need evidence before I open this door, okay? But really, the idea is that if you can get your kids used to that, being responsive to a signaling system that you can put out, then there's a lot less of the fighting, like, mommy was on a call, you ruined my call, you know? But also paired with that needs to be some independent strategies. So we need to think of, let's brainstorm where you can go for help if you're feeling stuck, or let's connect you with a friend that I know can help you who's in this same class. And that way you have structures in place to replace yourself and replace the teacher. And I mean, honestly, make sure that your kid knows how to email the teacher, text if they have Google Voice. That was a great strategy that I used because my kids text right back. So I actually directly text some students through a Google Voice, so it masks my personal number. And that's been huge. So if your teachers are resistant to giving their cell phone number, that is like a gentle suggestion you could give to them. It really pivoted a lot of communication at our school.
You know what I'd like to do is I really want to make sure that we get the needs of our audience met. I have questions here and I'm going to get them in, but I kind of want to know what questions are, if you could unmute everybody, if you have any specific questions so far or something that you want, because I really want it's a small group, so let's take advantage of it. If you have any questions about, like I was just thinking, and I'm going to start with a question while you're thinking of yours. Can everybody unmute themselves? Just if you have any background noise, then keep yourself muted. But
Yeah, and you can, if you guys could unmute yourselves, because I don't think I did it. And then there, question came in from Melanie in the chat. Melanie, I don't know if you're there. She was asking, Sarah, can you talk about best practices for teachers and favorite strategies for students for the strictly remote as well as for hybrid learning? So some of those very best practices. I'm not sure if Melanie is still there, but I wanted to share her question.
Sure. We really, from the education side, we have to make a couple of assumptions and then avoid a couple of assumptions. So the assumption I have to make every day is that there had to be a really good reason why a kid missed class. And then I need to approach the absences from that. So I can't go after a kid and be like, come on, you're not showing up, which is already kind of the tone some of my staff is taking. But instead, you know, honey, I know that this matters so much to you. What happened? Did you have an impediment? What can I do to get you there? We just have to rally around the celebration that our kids are showing up, you know? And I know I got into like a philosophical debate with one of my friends in Anaheim whose school won't give them attendance credit if they are on video from their bedrooms. But from my experience, some of my kids can't even unmute because there's babies crying or the TV is really loud. I mean, it's already such an imposition to do school from home for some of these kids that I would say best practices for teachers is to avoid assuming that you understand why. And if you are going to assume that there's something that you can help with to get out of the way for kids to join in rather than just assuming that it's choice or laziness. And then best practices for both ends of it, home and school, would be over communicate. It is very okay. Tell me what's going on and I'm going to give you directions for an assignment in a long form, in a short form, like doable steps, on email, on Google Classroom. Like I feel like I'm saying the same thing 100 times, but it might be that 99th and a half time that gets to a kid, and that's what I need to remember.
Wow. I mean, I'm only thinking about the problems here. So addressing Kenny's comment at the beginning, you know, they're probably giving rules, regulations, and, you know, some people think, well, a strict dress code is good because they feel like they're at school and somewhere, and other kids are like, well, you can't make me do it, you know? So what is your philosophy on that? And what is your school district doing about dress code?
We have some concerns with FERPA. It's the Federal Education Rights Protection something. I'm probably winging that, but it's basically like we have to respect student privacy. It's similar to HIPAA when you go to the doctor. And so we have to be mindful that not everyone is going to be comfortable with having their camera on in general. And so if students can verify that they're there through voice and they can type in the chat, we're accepting that for attendance.
Huh, interesting.
Well, and think about it, like I have a number of students who are homeless or who are like tripled up living in an apartment with many, many, many people. Just because of social stigma, you're not going to want to turn your camera on. So, and I would say best practice for home would be make sure that you test out the learning space that you're going to be using ahead of time, just to, like, I don't have the ideal situation right now because of the way the sun's coming in. I have the light behind me. I'm aware of that. You know, just make sure that your child double checks the background. I had a student show up that had a marijuana poster in the background. Wasn't his, but, you know, just make sure that you're aware of the image you're projecting. But as far as if you choose to turn your camera on, as far as requiring it, it makes me pretty uncomfortable for a lot of reasons to require that kids show up and keep the camera on. And, you know, I do understand the idea of dressing it, kind of like faking it till you make it. And that's probably more of an individual choice though.
And how about kids that don't have laptops or their connectivity issues and things like that? What are we doing with those kids?
Great question. And that's really been left to districts to decide, and decide's the nice way of saying it because it's a scramble, to be totally honest. In my district alone, we're feeling very frustrated because we had the funding for one-to-one iPads. So every student had the right to an iPad in the middle school. Well, when the high school ran out of laptops, they dug into our iPads without letting us know. And so we have a lot of students. I know, I'm glad your faces are outraged because I am too. So we have a lot of students who are now without the technology, the adequate technology. So again, that's why I say over communicate. If you're having a problem with technology, I mean, just think about the CMT version of this. I suck at typing on an iPad. It is so hard and frustrating. And then my knuckles hit the space bar and like the cursor's somewhere I don't want it. It's a mess. And so accommodations like plug-in keyboards, things like that are very reasonable to ask for to help support our kids. So technology can be empowering, but we also have to think about the impediments that just naturally occur with whatever technology the kids get. We haven't solved the iPad issue in my district either. So we mostly have facilitated free or very low cost internet by now because we had it from March, but the iPad issue is still huge. And so they prioritize kids with special needs. And now the rest are trying to function from their phones. So it's a lot of having the parents speak up and say, listen, like, I'm going to need some extra time, or I'm going to do this on paper and like text you a photo. I would say to teachers, accept a broad range of work examples and be very flexible.
Questions from our audience. Are there any other questions that were written, or should we, does anybody have any specific questions you'd like to ask Sarah right now?
Good question. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Sarah, thank you so much for being here. This is really cool. Our district is doing this kind of strange thing. They open school full on with like very little in the way of restrictions. I mean, masks, but other than that, pretty much usual operations, or you have the option of going full online, but it's for the year. And so the online classes that they've developed have 40 students in them. And these are first graders. So I was curious about your experience with learning at this age and whether it's actually feasible for like a good teacher, because I think they do have a good teacher, a very thoughtful teacher, to manage 40 students in this online environment, or whether that's sort of just like whether we're really just plugging, you know, our daughter in so that she's doing something, but that it's not really like a real learning opportunity for these kids. It's just, you know.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and the short answer is it's not going to be as good as real life. But the alternative, you know, if it's a high risk situation, I would say it's still worth it. I think also I've had to pivot because my head will not let it go. Like, I could do better. I could do more. Let me try this. I think I had to pivot in that the academics might be taking a hit, but there's a lot of executive function and independence and self-advocacy. And there's a lot of baseline skills that make us great humans and great adults that kids are learning right now because it's baptism by fire, you know? So it's like, your child's going to be able to like manage her time better and estimate how long things are going to take. And, you know, because she's going to have to strategize, and you can help facilitate that by asking her, you know, how were you able to show up on time? Or how did it feel when you felt frustrated? What strategies did you use to calm down? You know, God's honest truth, 40 is way too many for 6-year-olds. That's a valid concern, really, but I think the alternative is tricky too. And I know we're losing some enrollment to charter schools right now that are like kind of swarming our school, waiting for a parent to be upset with the public school system, and then they're like, come here. And oftentimes, and it really stinks because, you know, the funding model is by attendance. So average daily attendance is how we get our money. So when charter schools pull a few kids here and there, it impacts us because it doesn't take off of our bills. We still have to pay the lights, we still have to pay a teacher, you know, until a whole class is gone, but it takes away our income. So, and not all charter schools are bad. I'm not bad-mouthing charter schools, but many are popping up in this instance to be an alternative that maybe hasn't been fully vetted. So I would just caution, if you're tempted by that because you're like, man, 40 kids, oh wait, look at you, there's only 16, you know what I mean? The regulations on charter schools in most states are very loose, and so you can end up with situations where teachers are underpaid, there's no union. You could still end up with a whole bunch of kids in a class with no recourse, you know. So just our options stink. They stink.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sarah, what do you think about pods? There was an item on the news this evening about how parents with means, more likely, are forming neighborhood pods to hire a tutor to teach for 20 hours a week in conjunction with what the children are getting virtually, but to enhance what they're getting. Is that happening out west?
Yes.
It's happening in the pushy Washington, D.C. area.
Yeah, and you know, it's happening all over. It's happening in Northern California that I know of. It's happening down here. I can see the utility in that it provides consistent daycare. It gives parents a break. It's just a smaller situation than a classroom, but it's still a risk. So I can see how it would be beneficial, and I don't want to turn anybody off and say don't do it. I mean, obviously you're the parent, you need to evaluate risk and reward, but yes, those are happening. But Missy, I heard kind of the undercurrent of social concern in your question too, and you're absolutely right. The parents with means are going to be able to afford that, and the parents who don't have means aren't going to be able to, and that stinks because it dominoes through to their kids who, I mean, those are the kids I teach, and they are wonderful humans. Those are the ones we want to hire. I mean, they are the hustlers. They can find a way to get online, like by standing in the certain corner of the yard with their phone up, you know, like texting away, like trying to make it happen. They make it happen. And so it really stinks that now we're in a situation where they may not even get credit for attendance if they show up in the wrong clothes. You know what I mean? Like, we have to be very mindful that in holding high expectations, we're not also unfairly disadvantaging kids who just happened to be born into a situation.
As a parent, I just remember when Johan was in school and the homework battles and how we'd hire a tutor to come in because it was too much parent-child. You know, I didn't want to be the tutor and the mom. It just wasn't working out. So how are parents dealing with the stress of teaching or, you know, having their kids do virtual learning and making sure they're up? I can only imagine it with the homework, and I assume there's still homework. That hasn't changed. You can still do that at home. But how are there, I guess I want to know, are there therapy, are there coping skills for parents, because they're going to get upset and angry? I can see a lot of conflict at home. And how about for kids? I mean, we're talking about the education, but there's a whole psychological component to this that I'm not sure we are addressing, or maybe we are, and I just don't know because I'm not in the system.
I know I can speak from my experience. We're being really mindful about social emotional lessons. So we're infusing a lot. And it's crazy, but one of the rewards I use for like good engagement in an online class is allowing them social time, where I just monitor the chat and let them be off topic. And you would have thought I bought them each a car. I mean, they need that, and they're not having it. So if you haven't started school yet, I would make sure to connect with the teacher and just ask, you know, what plans do you have for socialization? Can we set up a buddy system in class so that I have another parent to talk to and my kid has another kid to talk to? just really being mindful about structuring that support ahead of time would be really powerful. And then you're asking me about parents. I think right now, as much as we can prepare ahead of time, like, face it, it will suck and it will go through waves where you got it and then it's going to get really tricky again. I think one of the big bang for your buck strategies is forced choice. So giving your child the choice between 2 or 3 things that you've already kind of pre-picked. And that way your child's empowered because they're like, oh, sweet, I have say over my destiny. When really you're like, sucker, I made all this up. So it's a win-win. I've seen a lot of parents get good buy-in with that. And then also, you can be realistic. If there's an assignment that's like a couple points and your child hates it and it smells like busy work, skip it. Talk to the teacher. Maybe you can do an alternative, like this is the time to shake up that status quo, like Missy was mentioning, that kind of helps to facilitate the managing of class in our country. Like this, not to get too political, sorry. But this is our chance to really like rethink the structures that we've just accepted because they were. And so busy work could be one of those things. Or like Vera, we were talking about the executive function that your child's developing. You could even have her go through the points, like the point values of assignments if the teacher is that clear, and say, if this was money, what would you want to spend your time on? The $20 or the $5? And I know I feel a little bit icky about that strategy because it's still sort of compliance based, like do what this person wants you to do and you'll be rewarded with points. But then again, I'm rewarded with a paycheck. So in some ways we don't escape that line of thinking. And I think that is one survival mode right now for parents, is to think about what's worth it and what am I willing to let go. And honestly understand that any grades that come from 2020, 2021 are going to have a little asterisk by them to everyone who interprets them and be like, oh, well, you survived. So I would really back off the emphasis on grades as much as possible and emphasize that independence and that self-realization, those skills that kind of get put on the back burner when we're so focused at school on like compliance and completion. Now we have the opportunity to think about quality and how are you when you show up, and sort of switch the script a little bit.
I also think navigating this whole process, I think is such an opportunity for growth. How do your kids navigate this process? How do they learn to pivot during this type of pandemic, during a pandemic? I think it's incredibly important. So for me, as a mom of 2 teens, even though I want them to be challenged and do their very best, I'm also looking to see how they navigate through this entire process. I mean, it's my daughter's senior year now and my son's sophomore year, and it's has so much to do with building character. Really, what is your attitude like during this time? And I noticed in the spring, when all of this happened, that my son Jack was like, I kept saying, what's due at school? What are your assignments? And we would be bickering about it, and he's like, it's not real. It's not real school. We don't really have to do it. And I'm like, it's real. This is, but now we kind of talked about it all summer, and really, he's much more focused now. We bought a desk for his room. I personally like the kids in their rooms because they're older doing work. They need that quiet. To touch on something you were talking about, the student well-being and stuff. I was very happy. Our kids just started school. We're in a public high school in Wilmington, North Carolina. And almost every single one of their teachers yesterday in each class when they started school asked all the students, how are you doing? How is this for you? How has this time been for you? And I was really surprised that they took the time to talk to the kids about how they're actually doing emotionally. What has this been like for them? So that was really nice to see and hear.
Yeah, and it really helps facilitate. I mean, we can learn from the kids right now too. So it helps them facilitating that self-awareness, which is also an executive function. and just that regulation. So one thing I wanted to add too was, especially with regards to CMT, you know, when I was growing up, I had like my CMT kicked in pretty early. I was 2 when I was diagnosed, so it was no mystery. And, you know, I had some handwriting issues. I definitely had foot drop when I was little, and they wanted to brace me. They wanted to like teach me to write the right way, which by the way, I never learned, but my handwriting's just fine. So, hey, but I was very resistant to looking different, so much so that I kept hiding my braces, and finally my mom just gave up because I just wouldn't wear them. Now I think is a great opportunity for families because there are assistive technologies out there that are helpful, like speech to text, where you can actually say what you're intending and it will type for you. And that can be a great opportunity for when you have hand fatigue, or just having that opportunity to try out different hacks to make schooling and lifing easier without that fear of judgment from your peers, I think is a really unique opportunity for us. And then also just getting your child to have some time to extrapolate the stressors from the world and just kind of check in with their body. I mean, that is really huge. Like, what do you notice about how you're feeling if you sit too long? What do you notice about how you're feeling when you've done some physical exercise? Really, just you can help as a parent facilitate that self-reflection, but it's a really unique opportunity for us to check in and see, you know, what type of exercise do you like, and, you know, all the kind of things that we just sort of back burner during the school year when it's fast and furious. I think now we can kind of push to the front and have that opportunity to school with our kids, which is unique. Not easy though.
No. Other questions?
I could build on that social piece that you were discussing. So I actually will be talking tomorrow to our daughter's teacher. And I was going to ask her exactly the question you raised, but I guess I don't really know what would be the ideal situation for kids interacting online. Like, you know, usually in a normal live environment, children cluster, they find peers that they like, share interests with, and then they sort of have their dynamic within that. So, you know, what do you see as like the best way to attempt modeling that online, obviously with great limitation, to like allow for friendship rather than just, oh, you're wearing a pink shirt and I'm wearing a pink shirt. Like, that's great. You know, I'll see you 4 months from now, the next time we Zoom. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like how do you, I mean, most children crave friendship, right? And so how do you enable that so they don't come out of this year, whether it's in person or online? Because in person, they're distanced, they're in masks. Like, it's not easy to make a best friend in that environment, but you don't want them to lose a year of connection. And so my question initially to the school was like, well, can you tell us who in this online program comes from our home school? Maybe I can contact the parents for play dates, you know, outside 6 feet apart, but at least like something. And the answer was, that's private information and we can't disclose it, which I totally get because of all the privacy, you know, rights. However, like, they still need friends. And so I guess my question is there anything I specifically discussed with them from your expertise that would help enable that?
That's a great question. I know for my homeroom, I gave the students buddies and I shared their emails with each other. And that was at least one step. So I would open it to maybe like, what ideas do you have for social facilitation? And if the teacher's like, I haven't thought of it, then maybe you can step up and say, hey, would you be open to my doing some activities once in a while? Or, you know, just sort of like open the door for yourself, and then you can email me and we'll brainstorm. But
Love that. Thanks.
because it's going to look different for 6-year-olds than it does for my 7th and 8th graders right now, or high schoolers for that matter. But I do think that it's important. And there's, I have a list on my website that you guys can check out that has like a bunch of different questions you can ask the teacher, because you can do a little bit of recon ahead of time that really helps you. Because right now, you have so much uncertainty, and we don't know, like Melanie Ryan was sharing with me that she was given the option for full distance learning, but you have to commit to it for the full year. Like, how do you know? You're not psychic. And then, but there's a good chance that your kids, like in Georgia, will be pushed back to distance learning anyway. So is it fair to add that transition? You know, there's just so much to consider that having something that you can do with that anxiety really feels good. And so asking the teachers right now some of these questions is a great way to facilitate that, like, whew, okay, I do have some sort of influence on my future, and helps you kind of navigate some of that unknown. Plus, if I as a teacher am asked something that I haven't considered, my brain will be like, oh, shoot, well, if one parent was brave enough to ask me, guess what? They all want to know. And that will at least plant a seed in the teacher's head that it's something that you value and something that you'd be willing to help facilitate if that's the way it came down.
Doreen.
I just wanted to share, I've been a kindergarten teacher, and so a couple of things that I think of with the socialization is, as a teacher, I can ask either individual parents, are you willing to share your phone number or email with Jimmy because Jimmy really gets along well with Johnny? Or I can ask as a whole class, you know, all the parents, are you willing to share your email or your phone number? Can I share it with the other parents in the classroom? You know, so there are options, and then parents can email me and say, you know, I'd really like my child to have a play date with so-and-so, and I can be the one, the go-between person to ask if I can share those.
Thanks for sharing that. That's super helpful.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that is something I do for my kids with autism, because initiating is really tricky for them. And so they'll have a best friend at school and they won't even think to get the phone number to connect outside of school. And so that's a really good point, Doreen. I'll just email the parents and say, hey, Sammy really gets along well with Ethan. Can they switch phone numbers? And usually that helps.
So how do you think, how is this affecting IEP and 504 plans? How is the whole online learning affecting those programs?
I think the theme of the night is it stinks. I'm sorry. I'm trying to think of all the hacks and walkarounds, but the truth is this is rough. Special ed's not canceled. I know for a while that was like the hot topic in April, May, like, oh, we canceled special ed. Like, no way. I know that for academic supports, there's still a ton that teachers can and are doing, like modifying work, having audio files go with anything that is reading related so that it supports the reading comprehension or fluency, whatever might be a challenge. For writing, we can do sentence frames. You can use assistive technology like speech to text, or even text to speech, where you can have the screen read to you. There's a ton. The great news is there's a ton of technology that can facilitate a lot of what the humans used to do. The bad news is not a lot of teachers are comfortable with it, and if they are, it's really hard to facilitate from afar, because I can't tell you how many times I've been on Google Voice with my kids, like, okay, tell me what your screen looks like, and I'm trying to picture it and tell them where to click, and it is an act of not losing your cool on both ends of the phone, but it is possible. So there are still many supports that we can be providing that may have been written in the IEP to happen in person, but now take on a different outfit in distance learning, but are still present. We're still addressing the need that inspired the accommodation, if that makes sense. Like if handwriting was difficult, maybe we allowed typing in class. Now in distance learning, we're facilitating that by getting them a plug-in keyboard or having assistive tech loaded onto the iPad or, you know, pushed out, because they can push out programs virtually if they can get your computer IP address. The tech wizards can do all kinds of cool stuff and get programs onto your technology at home. So we can do that. The therapy components are trickier though, especially the physical therapy, OT, all those kind of things. And it's probably more of a holding pattern right now, unfortunately, until we can continue to think outside the box to meet that. But some of the human element is that fairy dust that helps facilitate success.
You know, as you're speaking, I realize there's so much technology out there. I mean, I can barely manage a Zoom meeting, and you're talking about all this stuff and voice to text and text to voice and this and that, and like not, you know, concealing your email and your phone number. Like, how are teachers doing it all across the country? You don't become tech savvy overnight.
You kind of do.
You kind of do.
It's really truly like we're sharing a lot of materials. I have Googled how to everything. I mean, I even found myself at a parent night recommending that parents Google Classroom, which seemed very strange, but you can't. There are so many tutorials on YouTube.
Right.
And there is a little bit of truth to the idea that pressure like gives you that neurochemical cocktail for focus. And so when you are under pressure, sometimes you are better able to focus. You've got a little bit of adrenaline, a little bit of cortisol, all of those things that help kind of get that activity in your frontal lobe of your brain where your executive functions are. And that helps then you dive in. Like I've surprised myself on a couple times. Like I was disaggregating data today in a Google form, and I'm like, okay, 3 weeks ago I would have been like, no, I'm not doing this to take attendance, this is silly. And now I'm fast. So I'm not trying to take away that it's difficult, because it is crazy difficult. And I've had to use a lot of my own self-regulation of noticing, like, I want like 3 bars of chocolate for lunch, probably I need to take a break.
Other questions? Thank you, Sarah. That was a great answer. So as a parent, if I don't want my child to go to school and it's mandatory that they actually are attending school in class, what happens if I keep them home? Or what happens if I don't want to send them to school? But what alternatives are there? Would just sign up for homeschooling? And what if I'm too anxious and I don't want my kids to go to school?
There are alternatives. So you could look for a school district or a charter that's accepting students if that's if there are absolutely no options in your district. I have yet to find a district that's forcing everyone to go back. I think I just haven't found that. I mean, you can speak up if that is your situation, but I haven't heard of that yet. But it's absolutely your right to not, I mean, just don't go with the pressure. Trust yourself. And it's okay if academics take a hit right now, because let's be 100% honest, being back in person is still not going to be this like bucolic thing that we see in our brains of what school used to be like. There's going to be, I would estimate, 60% mask policing and 40% instruction, and you know, and social distancing policing and stuff. So there will be a learning loss in the physical school as well. I think we can't only knock the distance learning. It's going to be everywhere.
You know, what's interesting, Sarah, is that, you know, we're learning differently now, but there are also other parts of our brain that we're expanding and working on. And I remember when Yon was in school and we didn't follow the curriculum. Like, I had him in a private school. He had some learning differences, and it was a different environment. It was very lax, and I would get a lot of commentary and judgment about what's he learning. You know, this is not the right environment. It's too relaxed. He'll never get into college, et cetera, et cetera. And it kept up because we put him in a private high school, which is also small and very unique. and he did great. And he went to college, he went to, so sometimes I think, especially in some areas, there's all this pressure, he has to take this AP and this thing, but sometimes it's okay to let the learning go a little bit because there's different learning going on. We always believe like taking, trips were very educational, taught them about the real world. But this is another environment where we're learning different skills, which is going to be helpful, and it's hopefully not forever, right?
Right. And there's a super interesting book called Why Don't Students Like School? And it talks about the history of why schools were developed. And yes, it was to educate the population, but it was also to sort of make factory workers and make people who were compliant and who didn't challenge the status quo. And there's a lot of remnants of that in terms of like, don't interrupt me. And, all these things that have sort of turned kids out, like away from learning, that now we can kind of question because we've stepped back from it and say, maybe this didn't work. Maybe batching students by age instead of by skill or need doesn't make any sense, So I'm trying as hard as I can to see this as an opportunity.
Right.
Talk to me on Friday when I'm like sleeping through my lunch. Very different story. What's up, Missy?
I have a question. In a perfect world, do you believe elementary school children should be in a real school versus a virtual school?
In a perfect world that still had COVID?
No, well, I don't think that's a perfect world. But I believe personally that elementary school children need the structure to learn to raise their hand or to be quiet while somebody else is speaking or something like that, that they're not going to necessarily get, in my view, on virtual school.
I appreciate that. I can tell you though, to like relieve your anxiety, we do make our kids raise their hands when we're doing Zooms.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we do make them all mute their mic until they've got the floor and they're able to interrupt properly. So we're shifting that sort of social skill, but then there's also the take care of your own body skill that now we're trying to facilitate, stand up if you need to, or so we're bridging a little bit in the like independent, honor who you are, but still function within a group, which is kind of it's a new happy medium, but yes, they still have to raise their hands.
Thank you. Good.
Other questions?
I would say I had a couple tips if you are going back to physical school. If it's a high school or a middle school, if you have the opportunity, walk the campus ahead of time so that you can find the best, easiest routes, because oftentimes there's some mobility issues with CMT or at least pain. So you can kind of test out the routes, and that will really lower that affective filter, that like screen on your brain that's worried, so that on the first day you're able to just find your classes, go to your classes. I would say check in with the school nurse ahead of time. Make sure that he or she deeply understands CMT, that there are some breathing considerations to keep in mind, that, I would give more information than less because we don't totally understand COVID yet and its impacts long term. So just make sure that the nurse is sort of hyper aware of your child. I know when Melanie and I have talked a little bit, Melanie Ryan, and we always say, like, when you introduce your kid, like attach a chocolate bar with it, so that there's that positive association, because we're all about behavior shaping. But it's a really good idea to form those relationships and then make sure that you have that person at school that you can go to. So it's either like the case manager if your student's on an IEP, it's the homeroom teacher, it's the school psychologist, whoever you can connect with. Make sure that you're like massaging that relationship before the school year starts, because when you need to lean into them, you don't want your first interaction to be negative and you're in a panic. Just like teachers' best practice would be to call home a couple times saying how great your kid is before they call with the first complaint. And that way you've deposited into the bank before you have to take out.
I love
No
your
easy
strategies.
answers. I'm
I
sorry.
just love some of the way you teach and the solutions that you come up with. We should have you write a book about strategies in dealing with kids. You're wonderful.
I think I have from like 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. available. It's on
Well, we'll
BookJet.
take that time. We'll take that slot. Really, you're just a wealth of information, and how you view the situation and deal with every situation is very different and is very creative, and I love to hear that. Do you have any resources for parents or kids, like on Amazon or books or YouTube guides? Or I know there's everything out there, but there's some really unique ways of seeing teaching and the world and kids and dealing with them that I don't have, and I wish I had those insights when I was younger.
Thank you. I know. Sometimes I'm like, man, where was the me for me when I needed it? When
That's
people were
right.
making fun of me, like, my 6th grade class would have to sit on the lawn and wait for me to finish the mile before we could all go in. Can you imagine?
No, it's what a nightmare.
Yeah. So I think partially it's the motivation to make it work for everybody because I've been there, and I think as we travel on through this COVID stuff together, we have to keep in mind empathy for our kids, empathy for the teacher, not necessarily sympathy where you feel bad or feel pity or you pull off the expectations because you don't want to burden someone, but just get in their shoes for a little bit, feel it out, and then kind of make your decision from there. As far as resources, on the spot, of course, I can't think of anything.
You can send it out to the group afterwards if you think of something.
I would love to. Yeah, my brain will be available after I have dinner. But
your 3 pieces of chocolate.
What's your website?
Go ahead.
Oh, I'll type it in. So I have right now, and Melanie, thank you for the plug. She's like, your podcasts are awesome. I've been writing and recording podcasts, and I have a blog version of it if that's whatever's more accessible for you, about getting ready for school. So we've had school from home prep for about 4 or 5 episodes now, but all of the episodes are about outside of the box thinking to support kids. And in March, I think I pivoted from general executive function, like organizing, planning, prioritizing, and really honed in on distance learning and pandemic executive function. So sarahkesty.com is my website, and then there's the podcasts are linked and the articles are linked as well. And then I absolutely, I'll put my email in here too. We are a CMT family, so I absolutely would love to hear from you if you have more follow-up questions, if you wake up at 3 a.m. and think, wait a minute, this didn't click in my brain, let's geek out together, because that's what I think. We're stronger together, and I'm learning from everybody as we move along.
I want to thank you. Any last question? We have time for one last one if anybody has something to throw out there. I just want to, Sarah, what a great job. Really very, very inspirational at such a difficult time. Thank you so much for being available to us also. Oh, Melanie? Oh, that was a thank you. That wasn't a hand raise.
Yeah, I think it was a clap.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And Sarah we can send her questions, or you can send her questions, and we'll get this out there for everyone to listen to. And Laura, when we do, it'd be great to give her website, because it's so full of information and other resources and podcasts, which can help everybody out there on their own time, right? So thank you so much, and thanks everyone for taking the time to sit in and to listen to the Zoom meeting. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Sarah, for taking the time.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Nice seeing you. Great.
Thank you, guys. So good to see your faces.
I know, it's great. All right.
Take care.
Bye, Kenny. Bye, Rosie. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.